Hey friends, welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach podcast. Today I have a very exciting and special guest for you. Her name is Dr. Jessie Sanders, and she is the owner and chief veterinarian of Aquatic Veterinary Services. She received her veterinary degree from Tufts University, and she was the 2020 president of the American Association of Fish Veterinarians. And she is the private practice chair of the Aquatic Veterinary Medicine Committee of the American Veterinary Medical Association. Welcome to the podcast, Jessie. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, I don't think I know any fish vets.
No, there are not that many of us. And I mean, it's not really a skill that we're taught in veterinary school. It's not part of the standard. So a lot of veterinarians, go through their entire training never realizing that aquatics is actually a bigger part of veterinary medicine than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn about it because we just met, so I'll be learning along with everyone else. So can you kind of start with your veterinary journey? I like to hear everybody's story because we all have a story about how we got into vet med and how we ended up where we are.
Yeah, so I was one of those obnoxious children that always knew I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Yep.
I would get pet care books from my school library and recite them by memory to my parents, trying to, pressure them into getting me a little kitten. And after years, they finally relented, and I did all the things, the books tell you to back then. I ended up getting my veterinary assistant certificate when I was still in high school, which,
Wow.
Being really not allowed to do much.
Right.
But when I watched a surgery and passed out, which I thought at the time was from seeing blood. So, that kind of tweaked my thought of, oh, is this something that I really want? So I kind of got off veterinary medicine for a while. I ended up going to college for marine biology. So I went to the University of Rhode Island and had the wonderful opportunity to volunteer at Mystic Aquarium that's in Connecticut.
Oh, cool.
So I really wanted to be on the whale team, which, every little kid wants to play with marine mammals, and I get it. So
I know, dolphin training. I hear that a lot. It would be so fun to be a dolphin trainer.
I think a lot of people go through. So there weren't any openings on the whale team, but they're like, if you volunteer in a different department, they're more likely to bring you in to that one, after you build up some experience. So they put me on the fish and invertebrate team, which, if you've never been to Mystic Aquarium, they have a pretty sizable collection. And I'd gone there as a kid and was fascinated by all the different fish they had. They had sharks and this, relatively small, now that I look back on it, tank. So, first, couple months, like, well, this kid keeps showing up halfway through our lunchtime. Like, we got to give her something to do where she's out of the way. So they had a backup octopus tank because in major aquariums, you have your key exhibits that people expect to see. And unfortunately, with the octopuses, they don't have the longest lifespan. So just in case, essentially the floor model, there's one in the back that they can quickly swap in.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
I know. So it was.
Who knew? I didn't know that.
This is like what I learned on my first couple weeks. So my job was to clean the backup octopus tank that's like in this back dark corner, away from the public eye. And I had a little octopus friend whose name was Squirt. So Squid was in the front tank, Squirt was in the, and I had this big gravel siphon that would go along the bottom, and I just slowly pick up all the leftover food, all the poop. If there was any, like, Squirt decided to rearrange some things, I'd put everything back. And Squirt would grab onto my little gravel siphon and just kind of hop around with me while I was cleaning. And it was great. It was so much fun just, hanging out with this octopus and cleaning up his tank. So after that, once everybody came back from lunch, we do food prep, which is a big part in aquariums is, prepping the food for umpteen thousand animals, from down to like the tiniest little mysis shrimp up to, big pieces of fish for the sharks, for the rays. And again, being a beginner there, it was just, keeping you in one spot, giving you a task.
Keeping you out of trouble.
Yes. And slowly I wanted to learn more and more, and I harassed their staff to no end. And I got to do, projects like doing shark physicals. I mean, so they had like 6-foot
That's
sand
super
tiger
cool.
sharks. I know, these 6-foot sand tiger sharks that need a physical exam. Like, how do you give a 6-foot sand tiger shark a physical? I mean, I wasn't directly involved. I was in the back, like, taking notes, but I got to watch everything, and it was just so fascinating that I ended up doing 2 internships with them. One was part of my senior honors thesis at URI, doing the nutritional value of freshly hatched sea monkeys, which is used as a food source for various invertebrates. So
now tell me, are those the sea monkeys? Because I'm old. Are they the ones that they used to advertise that you could buy and you put them in water and they like turn into little creatures?
Yes.
I always wanted to buy those when I was a kid.
So we have them at different stages of the aquarium, and they were always wondering, like, is it better to feed them, when they're freshly hatched, versus do we let them like bulk up a little bit? Does that like provide a different nutritional profile? And I was actually able to prove that, the freshly hatched ones actually had the most nutrition, because they're born with this little yolk sac. And if you let them kind of use that up, it's not well converted into, overall nutritional value. So if you feed them when they're young, when that yolk sac hasn't been absorbed, it actually will pass that nutrition on to whatever you're feeding it to.
That's pretty cool.
So, I know. And this paper, I published it back in college. It's still downloaded every day. Because
so you were onto something with the sea monkeys.
I know. So it really just astonishing to me that, I graduated, oh dear goodness, I gotta think back, 2008. So this study is still being useful to people. But anyway, I'd harass the fish and invertebrate staff to no end, and they're like, you might want to talk to the veterinarians about like what they do. So talk to them. They gave me a couple more projects, and they kind of put me back on the path to going to veterinary school. So in that time frame, I'd actually figured out that I didn't pass out because of the blood. I actually just have low blood pressure issues. I'm the one who can't tell when I'm sitting down, obviously. One of my doctors kind of put it as like a horse. My blood pressure is just super low. So when I'm standing for long periods of time, yeah, I get orthostatic hypotension. So that's why I had fainted. Like doing with the, after I'd like taken care of that, I didn't have any problems with that anymore.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I applied to veterinary school thinking I would be an aquarium veterinarian, which unfortunately the jobs are few and far between. They're highly competitive. Usually they require an internship and sometimes a residency. And if you want to do a zoo or aquarium residency, there's currently 3 in the country.
Wow.
So super
hard to get into.
And I was not the greatest veterinary student. I had a hard time kind of keeping up with the stuff that I wasn't as into. So I liked, the fish, the exotic stuff. Horses and cows, bored me to no end, unfortunately, which is a big part of the curriculum. I struggled quite a bit in veterinary school and made it to my 4th year. And I know I planned out all my externships. I was going to SeaWorld, the Marine Mammal Center. I went back to Mystic as an extern, which was fascinating. But I also had time to work with a veterinarian who I'd met at a program called Aquavet that's run in the summer. It's 4 weeks of all sorts of aquatic med, starting with invertebrates through fish all the way through marine mammals. So Dr. Helen Sweeney had come to teach us about fish surgery, which now
In,
I actually
in
run.
vet school, you had a lecture on fish surgery, because we didn't have that when I was in vet school. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so this was at that Aquavet program that was a summer
Oh,
program
okay.
that I took between, I want to say it was between my second and third year of vet school. And as part of the veterinary, your training 4th year is you have to go do a couple weeks of private practice, which is one of the things that a lot of people in veterinary school are not that familiar with unless you've worked in a clinic prior. So I talked to Dr. Sweeney. She has a small animal exotics and fish clinic out of Buffalo, New York, of all places. So I went up there hoping to see some fish, but I was floored by the way that she ran her practice, how she worked with her clients, how she worked with her patients. And it was just the chillest, most awe-inspiring 2 weeks in my veterinary teaching curriculum, and kind of made me fall in love with veterinary medicine all over again.
Nice.
So that kind of pulled me off the path of kind of the aquarium position, and I thought more kind of going into the private practice was a better fit for just me as a person. After veterinary school, the thought of doing an internship or a residency was a little
Kind of
overwhelming.
scary, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the one nice thing about veterinary medicine is you can just go straight to private practice the day that you graduate. So my sister's a human surgeon, so it's fun to compare because you don't get that when you're in human medicine.
Right. It takes a long time to become a surgeon, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh
they,
yeah.
and they teach us in vet school, and you're out there cutting things, right?
Bit nicer. So I moved from New England. I was born in Connecticut, went to my undergraduate in Rhode Island, and then vet school in Massachusetts. And I just wanted something different. So I had some family out here in California and went around looking for a private practice job where, I could do small animal exotics and fish, which you think for a lot of clinicians would be like, hey, we can, increase our offerings, increase our revenues.
Yeah.
And absolutely zero. Well, I got one really sad offer, but it wasn't really what I was looking for. So looking around at the area that I was in, I am currently based out of Santa Cruz, California. In San Jose, at the time I started my practice, there were 5 different vendors that were importing koi specifically from Japan into the state to sell to, the general public. So there are a ton of fish in this area of California.
Coming in.
And yeah, and then that's like being brought in. That doesn't include any fish that are already here, those that are breeding
that
in
people own. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went ahead and just took the leap. It's one of those things I've always told myself, like, this is just what I was put on this earth to do, is to take care of fish. So I started my own practice in March of 2013. So we're going to be having our 10-year anniversary next March. And we are, I've been involved with collecting all the stats from various fish veterinarians, all over the country and the world. And we are, one of the most profitable, most long-standing vet practices that cater specifically to pet fish in the country right now. Something I have to, continue to tell myself, like, yes, we know what we're doing. Yes, we've made this a success. And I want to pass that, kind of thinking onto other veterinarians.
That attitude, like that's a really good lesson for people. It's like, look, this is your passion. And so you turned it into a profitable, thriving business, which is amazing.
And there's so many pet fish out there that could be dramatically impacted by proper veterinary care. And a lot of veterinarians are just scared to work with them because they don't know what to do. Like, a fish is coming into your practice, like, how do you give it a physical exam? How do you do any diagnostics? Like, a lot of veterinarians are just so overwhelmed by that they kind of just freeze up a little bit and say, oh no, we're not going to deal with that. Like, go to the pet store or go read something on the internet.
Well, yeah. I know in my area there are, well, I shouldn't say I know because I could be wrong, but I don't know of any people that practice on fish. I had a really good friend in college that went through Michigan State for fisheries and wildlife, and he was the only person I knew that knew everything about fish. So we would go to the pet stores and vet school, and he would tell me like all the proper names and what kind of fish, and his whole house was full of tanks. And he was a really fascinating individual. And he ended up working for an aquarium once he got out of school. They didn't have a veterinarian. He kind of was it, but he went through school, not as a veterinarian, but as a fisheries. And so, you know, he's the only one that I could ever call when someone called about a fish and say, I have no idea, call him, you know, he knows. But it's fascinating that there's that many, not only fish that need a veterinarian, but a number of fish vets.
Yeah, we're slowly building up our numbers. So the American Association of Fish Veterinarians was actually founded in 2012, the same year that I graduated veterinary
So
school.
it's new. Did that have anything to do with you?
Yes. So again, I've been with that. I was their 2020, unfortunately their COVID president. So it kind of limited together. But we started, you know, a small collection of maybe 40, 50 veterinarians, and now we're up over 200. We just had our first ever standalone conference in Florida where we had over 100 attendees. I gave 2 lectures, one on diagnostic imaging and, you know, the marketing behind my fish practice. And then we actually did a fish surgery lab for students and veterinarians that, you know, wanted to learn how you take the skills of, okay, we're going to do a spay or neuter on a dog or a cat. This is how you do it in a fish. And it's almost identical, the procedure itself. I mean, obviously the anesthesia is a little bit different and you have to have, but if you can do a spay or neuter on a dog or cat, you can absolutely do it on a fish. It's one of those things that you just got to do it once and, oh, this all makes sense. Like, this is something I can do. I just needed someone to, you know, give me the little push to make that happen.
And yeah, and give you the confidence that it's not that hard. Yeah, that's fascinating. So for the 10 years that you've been in practice or with your own practice, what are kind of some of the lessons that you've learned from that endeavor? Because you started from scratch, right?
Yeah. Thankfully, I had Dr. Sweeney was able to at least give me the basics of, you know, you need this equipment. She gave me kind of a rough pricing structure. And that was pretty much all that I started with. Thankfully, I had my dad who actually started his own company in hydrographic software of all things. So not anything really related, but he's given, you know, the basics of, you know, you need a business plan, you need to find a bank, you need to have an accountant, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And when I was coming out of vet school, you know, I had a little bit of extra training, but I never actually, you know, worked in private practice before. So, I mean, it was essentially trial by fire, which I know a lot of veterinarians, it's not just how they're programmed. For me, it's just what I had to do. And I think going out there and just starting to see cases, I learned a lot faster than kind of having someone holding my hand throughout all of that. And I mean, I'm sure I screwed up a lot of cases when I first got going. And was not charging appropriately. That was one of the biggest issues that we continue to struggle with, is just because it's a fish, you know, people will undervalue that as a client, as a patient. So, I mean, the skills that I have were like equivalent to having, you know, an orthopedic specialist come work on your animal. And that is, you know, a very high price tag item. So,
Right. Doesn't matter how much the fish costs, right? It's the same thing with our pets. Like, you have a cat that you found on the corner and something happens to it, you still got to pay the big bucks to get it looked at, right? I think we forget that as vets. We think, oh, it's just a fish, or oh, it's just a hamster. Like, because I do exotics, and somebody brings in a, you know, $10 hamster, and you feel bad because you want to charge them, you know, $300 for a surgery, but it's a kind of a mind shift that you've got to get away from, is that thinking they're not worth something just because they didn't cost a lot.
Yeah. So that's something that I know our practice has struggled with this entire time. So it's something that we've gotten better at. And, you know, I'll pull up, we had just had our annual meeting. I have two wonderful practice managers, and we actually have a subcontractor down in Southern California who does work with us. So we all had our big annual meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I pulled up one of the invoices that, you know, was within my first year of getting going compared to what we charge now.
To do now.
Yeah, it's like, well, I know my skills will improve a little bit, but not that much.
Right.
So having that kind of retrospective, like, this is where we started from, but this is where we're at now. And especially with my lecture that I gave at the Fish Vet conference a couple weeks ago, I want people to start, you know, at the level that we're at now, not back where I was 10 years ago and have to, you know, catch up to the point where we are now. I want them to skip that step, essentially.
Start with the big bucks, right? Yeah.
It undervalues doing if you don't charge. Like, the owners just don't think that you know what you're doing, and unfortunately it just makes things a lot harder, especially if you want to, you know, persist in that. They're gonna always remember, like, the, you know, brand new veterinarian who didn't know what the heck she was doing and just kind of undercharged. But
On purpose, like because of the self-confidence piece. So let's talk about that a little bit. You told me that you weren't the best veterinary student, which I hear a lot in my coaching practice. I wasn't a good student. I struggled, blah, 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 blah. Like, I hear that a lot, and I thought it a lot about myself. So let's talk about that. Like, how did you overcome that way of thinking? Where do you think it changed for you to go from, I'm not that great of a vet student, to now I'm going to be a business owner? Like, how do you make that mind shift, and what are all the reasons? Like, what advice can we give about that?
yeah. So, I mean, everyone goes through the veterinary, you know, the match process, and then they rank all the students 1 to 63 in my case, and you're looking at 3 in my class.
Yeah.
But even when I graduate, after working with Dr. Sweeney, like, I knew that I wasn't going to be going down any traditional paths. Like, I knew that I was going to make it work with fish somehow.
Regardless, because that was your love.
Yes. And when I started my practice, I really kind of saw the response of the other fish veterinarians and the other clients. It really kind of pushed me to take this as far as I can. I mean, I listened to your podcast with all those other limiting beliefs of, oh, I'm not worthy, oh, I don't know that much. I do not have that problem at all. I know that I'm an amazing fish veterinarian, and I know that our practice is worthwhile. So again, when I was starting out, and I don't remember really feeling like that. But again, now this is the 10-year retrospective, and looking back at, you know, what I started with. Everybody, I mean, I'm sure they didn't tell me to my face, but I'm sure a lot of people thought I was completely nuts.
Probably, right? Because they were like, you just got out of school. What do you know? You're starting a bit, like, they probably did think that.
Yeah. And especially in all pet fish aquatic practice.
Yeah. How are you going to make a living at that? Yeah.
There are others that have been attempted, and they've kind of shifted out of it after a couple years. Again, since I now have the 10-year kind of perspective on things, I'm one of the rare ones who's actually made it past, you know, it's about that 8-year cut, it seems, where everybody's just like, nope, I don't want to deal with this anymore. For me, it's been the support of other veterinarians. So when I kind of reached that point, is like, is this really what I want to keep doing? I reached out to those other veterinarians who, you know, passed that mark and have made their careers in fish for decades. And they were really able to set me kind of back on the path of, yes, this is what I want. And thankfully, I have a wonderful practice manager who takes a lot of the kind of minutia off my plate of, talking to a client, getting them set up, taking all those random calls from people who, might be just looking for some free advice.
They're
But
not going to
she
bring
and
their
I,
fish in because they don't want to spend the money, but they want you to tell them what to put in the tank or whatever.
yeah. So I worked with her. She's been with me for 8 years, and she's just fantastic. And her and I work really well together as a team. And having her support, and again, the support from my other colleagues, just that's the reason why I am still here and going. And thankfully, I have a wonderful husband and family that are behind me, even though they don't maybe quite understand all the time what I'm doing. And I still get questions from my client, so I have some other colleagues. They're like, "Are you still making money doing this? Like, are you doing okay?" And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
we're doing just.
Isn't it fascinating that they're so worried about that? It's like, that's what I tell some of the people that I coach. It's like, why do you care if they are worried about it? Like, you know what you're doing, you love it, you're focused, this is your passion. Like, why do we care so much about what other people think? And it was like when I started life coaching, people are like, you're going to do what? You're going to become a what? I'm like, a life coach. What is that? Like I got a lot of attitude about that. It was like they kind of looked down on me. I'm like, no, this is cool. This is really cool. Like, I'm going to learn how to do this and I'm going to do it well. And I'm going to help people by doing it, but people, they like to poo poo you, they like to say that's dumb or that's silly, or how's it going to work? Or, you're running a practice. Why do you want to be a life coach? That's dumb. So I think that one of the lessons to take from you, and on some level from me, is that if you really, really have a passion for something, you can make it work. And maybe not overnight. Like it took you a while, right, to get going.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I want to share, what I learned and the mistakes that I've made.
Yes.
And I want to pass those on. They don't make those same mistakes. I mean, you might have to make those mistakes. Just that's the way some people learn. And that's
sometimes you
fine.
do. Yeah. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. That's kind of how it gets us going, right? It teaches you the lesson, so then you can take a different step and a better step, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get to that point where you were like, this is super cool, I want to teach everyone how to be a fish vet?
So I think that came on after a couple years of after I finally got things rolling and was able to have the numbers behind things, because people want proof that you're actually making money.
Right.
And the first
You
couple
want to
years,
see the books.
yeah, they want to. So when I was finally, confident that my books weren't going anywhere, I'm able to show people, this is how much we charge per client. This is how we charge for travel. And again, it comes down to knowing that you are worthy of being paid like this, because that owner has already called the veterinarian. Like they've already done the hard part of reaching out to you for help.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked to a lot of students that are all like, yeah, well, we like fish, but there's no jobs, there's no money. I'm like, hold it right there. Like, there's absolutely money that's outside of, the traditional going into an aquarium, which if you're in, you're probably in for life. But doing the pet side of things, there are so many pet fish out there. I mean, they've done the studies. There's more pet fish than there are cats and dogs. And
Well,
a lot
yeah,
of the
because
time,
if you have fish, you've got a bunch of them, right? Like, you don't have 30
yeah,
cats, but you might have 30 fish in your tank. So yeah,
exactly.
the numbers make sense.
Yeah, and a lot of the fish owners are already the cat and dog owners. So it's not like you're going out to find more clients. They're the same clients that you already have.
Right.
So, but again, it comes down to I don't know what I'm doing when a fish, a call comes in, a client asks a question. So I've put together my website with a lot of just kind of basic resources of, if your fish looks like this is what you need to talk to your vet about. Like, it comes down to water quality, diet, and a lot of the times the environment that fish is in. And that's stuff that, it just takes a little research on your part. So once you've, done the basics of fish things, I'm trying to offer more classes and more online learning, more in-person sessions where, you come, you try it, you see if it's something that you want to learn more, and then you take the next step from there. So trying to put together, our YouTube videos that have fish surgeries, try to answer, the common questions that we get from the public. And then we have online training programs in pet fish specific. If any vet students, we have that program that's up on our website. And then we're hoping to offer some live programs in the future where people can actually come and work with me and a couple other fish vets to actually like put hands on a fish, which again is one of the things that we're really struggling with right now, is just providing opportunities for people to actually put hands on a fish. Because I think that's the way that people just learn, and are able to grasp these concepts a lot easier rather than me just talking at you.
Yeah. Well, and as you're talking, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking back to when I started working. I wanted to be a bird vet. And in my state, there was only like one, maybe two in the whole state. And the AAV was kind of relatively new, and it wasn't a big thing, but I really wanted to do it because I've always loved birds. So I had to go to the guy in the state that knew what he was doing and try to, learn all I could. So I think we just have to remember that all of the pet species at some point, back in the 30s, nobody had pet dogs and cats and didn't call the vet, right? And now it's so changed. Like everybody is, wanting vet care for their pets. And I think the same thing's happening with your fish now. And I think if we remember that it all started somewhere, and things have grown. Now there's tons of people that see birds in my area, but when I started, there was very few. So it's just kind of that evolving of our profession that you're basically spearheading with fish.
Yeah, that's the example I share with everyone too. Back in the day, nobody valued cats and dogs.
Right.
It was all about the life.
Yeah, it was all about the livestock and the farming, and now it's kind of flipped, right? There's a lot more pet owners than farmers. So yeah, I think to keep that in mind. So what do you think it's about you in particular? Like what qualities? Because you said you're super confident about your practice, you're super confident about your abilities as a fish veterinarian. What about you in particular can another veterinarian that's struggling with their self-esteem and self-worth and those limiting beliefs that this can't be done, what kind of things would you tell them to think about?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's always that talk, like, what would you tell your younger self? Essentially, when I was, struggling with, is veterinary medicine really the thing for me? And again, when I was little, I knew that I wanted to be a veterinarian. I knew that I wanted to help animals, and I came back to it. It took a little bit of time. So I talked to a lot of students who are kind of, on the fence of, is this really something I want to do? And if it's something that interests you, that you want to learn more of, you don't have to make it your entire profession. I am the one, kind of super.
You're the exception.
But there are ways that, if you're working in a small animal clinic, that you can still incorporate fish without, going 100% full steam all the time. But if it's really like, I don't want to say boring or not as thrilling to work with, the cats or dogs versus the fish or, marine mammals, if that's really your passion, there are definitely ways to do that. And it really comes down to talking to other people that are, in that position that you're in, because they're the ones who have done what you want to do successfully.
Right.
So talking to other veterinarians, especially the fish ones that have, again, that they've done this for years, like they figured it out. They were really the ones who kind of, kept me on this path rather than me trying to like jump off it just because, it's hard.
Because it sounds hard, right? It sounds hard. But I would like to offer that hard things reap big rewards. And that's what we sometimes forget. It's like, it's hard for a reason because the reward is big. And if you're super passionate about fish and you end up with a successful fish practice, what could be better than that?
It's pretty awesome.
It
And
is
the
pretty
other thing with
awesome.
sometimes, I mean, all the fish vets are very kind of isolated. I mean, in my area of California, I'm pretty much it. The next closest, fish veterinarian, we have 2 aquariums, but the next closest is going to be all the way up in Davis at the University of California, and he's about 3 hours away.
Wow.
So he's awesome. Try to, meet up when I'm driving through. So the conference that we just had, where it was all the fish veterinarians together, was
That's
just the
cool.
most awesome, like energy boosting, awe inspiring. So again, if you're still a student and you have, student pricing on all that, it's really great to kind of immerse yourself with essentially all the weird fish kids and see if this is the group that you fit in with. And again, I'm just a little pet fish. I'm like the sub specialty. I mean, there's aquaculture, and there's regulatory work, there's Department of Natural Resources, you got the aquarium veterinarian. So aquatics is a very, very large and broad category. So even if, you're kind of interested in fish, there might be a way that you can make it work that might not necessarily be pet fish side of things, but it might be aquaculture, it might be teaching. There's really a lot more opportunities when you kind of just start looking outside of, this is what you were taught in veterinary school, and this is the way it's always supposed to be. There's so many different categories that I think some veterinary schools don't do the greatest job at exposing veterinarians
Agreed.
to, and I don't know why that is. I mean, when I was at Tufts, we got 2 hours of fish, and our exotics veterinarian left before our clinical rotation, so I didn't even get any exotics rotations, which was
Right.
kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But if I can do it with 2 hours in my veterinary career, I mean, anyone who gets that or more is obviously more qualified than I was when I came out of veterinary school.
Right. Well, and I would like to remind veterinarians or vet students or wherever you are in your journey, even if you haven't been to vet school yet, but you're interested, I would encourage you to do that kind of homework where you find the people that are doing the things that you want to do. Because, I've had vet students approach me because they wanted to be a business owner or a bird vet or whatever that I was doing that they were interested in, to kind of pick my brain and see what I would recommend. And like, I'm always open to that. And I've been in a management group for, gosh, probably 20 years of hospital owners that get together and talk about their practices. And I learned so much from them. And so I think if we can just be brave enough to reach out to someone, they'll be open to helping you. Like your veterinarian, Dr. Sweeney, right, was open to helping you, saying, yeah, this can absolutely be done. You can absolutely have your own practice. Here's how you do it. And I think that we are so caught up in that imposter syndrome or worried that somebody's going to think we're stupid. Like when I first started working for Dr. Evans, who was the bird vet, the specialist in my area, I was super intimidated by him because he knew so much more about birds. But what better way to learn is from somebody that knows. And so I think that, just that little bravery piece or that tenacity that you had is something that, you can pull out of yourself, even if it's scary, and do it and get you to where you want to be, which is what you did.
Doing that first little outreach is the hardest part. But once you do it, I mean, it's been the hardest at the same time. Mm-hmm. But once that step, it'll kind of like, you get a little bit more inspired, you learn a little bit more, and then you talk to the next person and the next person, and then you're the person that people are coming to talk to about it.
Yeah. When I was in high school, actually, there was a veterinarian opening a practice near me, and she was one of the, first female veterinarians in that area. And I just banged on her door, like I begged her for a job until I just wanted to learn. I wanted to be a kennel kid and learn how to do all the vet stuff because I knew I wanted to be a vet. And, she's one of my best mentors to this day because she finally broke down and was like, oh, I guess this kid's not going away. I got to give her a job. And that's how I got started. And I learned so much from her. And she was my mentor all the way through vet school. during the summers, I would go work for her. She taught me a lot. And had I not been that annoying kid banging on her door when she was opening her practice, I wouldn't have had that. And so I think, you know, if we can just remember back to when we weren't afraid and we weren't embarrassed to be obnoxious, that would help a lot.
I'm obnoxious. I've gotten better at being obnoxious down the line. Mostly,
Well, I think
again,
as you get older, you grow.
you
Yeah.
know how to be in certain places.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit to people out there that have this idea. Like I had the life coaching thing I thought was cool. You thought the fish thing was cool, and you want to start a business. Like, do you have advice for those people that are like, they've got this great idea, they really want to go into this part of vet med, they really want to own a business? Do you have any advice for those people on where to start and what to do and how to procure that tenacity that you had?
So first thing is do something. So
take a step. I think I just talked about that this week on the podcast. Take an action step last week.
Yeah, it's gonna, the hardest part is sometimes when you're sharing, you know, how awesome you think an idea is, and somebody's like, oh, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that. So share, you know, what you want to do with the people that you trust first, and kind of build up that confidence, and then you can go kind of farm out to the general public. And when they tell you you're crazy, you're like, watch me do this.
Yeah.
It really comes down to just doing anything, doing something, like picking out your clinic name, putting together a website. I used some resources from score.org. So it's a small business mentoring program. It's free. It's open to everyone. I met with someone just to help me put together a business plan, which, you know, is the basics of any business. But, you know, putting those little pieces together, you start to think about marketing. You think about, you know, what structure you need as far as scheduling goes. How do you get, you know, your phone number and your bank account? And just doing any little thing is better than just sitting there and doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, because when you start, it's so overwhelming, right? Like this is the way it is with any big goal. It feels so big that you don't think you know what to do. And so just kind of being like, okay, I just got to take a step. So let me pick the one that I think I can handle, or the one that I think is most important. And let me start with that. And then once that's off your plate, then you can start to kind of chip away at it. It's not going to happen overnight, right?
Yeah. So it's, you know, whatever law of momentum, like a body in motion stays in motion. Like you just got to start rolling. You got to start doing something, and then it's easier. And you'll, again, when I was starting like there was a whole list of things that I needed to get done. And I looked at this and be like, is this really what I want to do?
Yeah, you just put it away because it looks so long, right? You're just like, oh, I can't do that. It's too much.
Yeah, but I remember, so what helped me was remembering the experience of working in Dr. Sweeney's practice and being like, this is how I want to be as a veterinarian. And so that was really kind of my, you know, intrinsic, this is what we're going to do. Like,
that's your vision.
In order to have a small business, like, this is what you got to do. Like, there's no way around it. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you had an idea because of seeing her practice that this is what you wanted. Like, what do you want? And that's your vision. And it might be way out there, but if you can keep that in mind, that will help you keep going.
I mean, if you're talking to the one unicorn who has a fish only pet fish practice, I mean, anything in veterinary medicine, if it involves an animal, I'm pretty sure you can make possible.
Yeah, like what if you were just I don't know, I'll pick sugar gliders because they're like the bane of my existence. What if you wanted to be just a sugar glider vet? Could you make that happen? Yeah, I bet you could.
I'm sure you could. Yeah, especially because you said there's.
Yeah, I don't love sugar gliders. I'm really good at treating them and neutering them and all the things, but I don't like them. I just did it because I kind of had to, you know. I mean, they're cute. I like how cute they are. That's about it.
Nice if there was a specialist sugar glider veterinarian who, you know, since you're so
loved
in
it.
that, like, here you go.
Yeah, I would be happy if I knew somebody that was like really loving them. I'd be happy to send them their way. So yeah, I think that's something that we really need to remember is like, what are you passionate about? What do you love? And then how are you going to make it? You know, how are you going to do it? And I would encourage, like we said before, find somebody that is doing what you're doing and ask them for help. And if they blow you off or shut you down, then go to the next one. Like there's always somebody, and I would be hard pressed to think that there would be any vet that would shut you down. There might be a few. I've heard of a few naysayers that are like, don't go into vet med. Like I don't like that, but
A couple of those that I've come across, but I mean, and again, it comes down to those that know you as an individual, especially. I mean, and again, it's going to take time to build those relationships, but and again, coming together, that fish vet conference was just the best thing that I've had in a while, because it's
that's
all
really
like
cool.
hanging out. We're talking about nothing but fish for 3 days. Like this is just the most awesome thing ever. But again, I can call them up and I'm not. It's usually not at this point consulting on a case. It's more like, hey, I'm in this situation. Like we've had a client that is demanding that we treat their fish over a picture on the internet, which has required us to get lawyers involved. And we're like, we can't, like, it's literally a law in California that we cannot break. And he's insisting, like, I need to see this law. I need to talk to your lawyer. And we're just like, what is going on? So I can call up my friend. It's like, hey, we have this fruitcake that just like thinks he's like knows everything about how veterinary medicine works. And they're like, oh yeah, we've totally had that before. And even though it doesn't resolve anything, just talking to somebody who's had that similar experience just validates that I'm not crazy. Like this is just a
Right.
situation that I'm
Well,
across.
and it will end and it'll get better and you'll get through it. Like it really does help to have support. I mean, I say that all the time, and that's why I do this coaching thing, is because I want to be your support. And so if somebody's really interested in fish medicine, then now you're going to be their support. So
And
tell
I'm
me,
here to
go ahead.
I'm here to help. Even if it's just like random fish questions, like I have this case coming in, like what do I need to do? Like we can walk you through all of that. It's not a big deal.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. So because I'm ignorant about fish medicine and I want to learn, tell me a little bit about how it all works. Like, are you treating people's koi and their koi ponds? Are you treating their aquarium fish, saltwater, freshwater? Like, kind of tell me in general what you're doing, because I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, so we see all different kinds of fish. About 99% of our clients are going to be either koi, goldfish, or betta fish. So the little tiny ornamental ones.
Yeah, the betas, that's fascinating. The ones they keep in the
Yeah,
little tiny bowls.
yeah,
I
that
know
is with
that's
those.
bad.
So about 80% of our practice is actually koi, which are big outdoor goldfish. Essentially, they're all
Yeah, they're
cousins.
cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing with them is they're in a big pond outside. And the last time the owners actually like put hands on them was when they were coming home from the store years and years and years ago. And when it comes to fish, I mean, you're talking essentially about an underwater horse. So they have that same prey mentality that they think something's coming along to eat them at every second of the day. But the water really plays a critical part in their overall health. So the air that we breathe is obviously directly linked to our health. But if you super concentrate that into a water medium, it spreads diseases, it spreads parasites. It's just a kind of a bigger picture look at fish being both a herd species and an individual species. So when I'm saying doing an assessment, first off, I start with, walking through the pond or the tank and making sure, the filtration is properly maintained, how often they're feeding, what kind of food they're feeding, how they do their maintenance. So like a lot of the history questions that you ask, a cat or a dog, you got your same list, like any vomiting, diarrhea, I don't even remember the third one anymore. Coughing, that's it.
Coughing,
So
yeah.
so there's a list of fish questions that you just get in the habit of getting good at. And after that, we'll do the water quality testing, which is a big important component, because obviously if your water is not healthy, they're going to be stressed out, and that leads to chronic stress, which leads to decreased immune function. And since you're a fish living in a toilet, all sorts of environmental bacteria can come and invade your system.
Yeah.
So after we do the water quality, I'm actually going to go catch the fish, take them out, and put them in a bucket with some sedation. So catching fish is one of those things that you never think about when you're, say, going out to a pond call. But again, since I worked in an aquarium for a long period of time, I am insanely good at catching fish. And I do it without a lot of
fish that you want, because I'm sure that's part of it too. It's like when somebody brings me a cage full of budgies and they're like, that's the one right there you got to catch. It's harder when they're all in there, right?
Yeah. So being able to catch that one specific fish is sometimes the hardest part of my, and the one thing that amazes the owner is like, oh, you got him out in like 10 seconds. It's like, yeah, what did you expect me to do? Just sit here and like look at him for half an hour?
Yeah.
And then usually when they'll come out, I use a chemical sedative in the water, because again, prey animals, they're big slippery torpedoes, especially these big koi. So giving them a little sedation mellows them out, and I'm really able to look at all sides of them. And then we'll usually collect skin mucus and gill samples to look at under the microscope. And this will give us a better idea of if there's any parasites, look at the gills for any, issues with the water quality, any dietary issues. And then the fish can go back into their home environment, wake up, be all happy. With the betas in particular, a lot of times that comes down to just simple husbandry issues, which I'm sure is very common with all the exotic species as well. You see all these pictures on the internet and Instagram and all that of this fish like in this tiny container with all these plants and whatnot, and then his tail's all torn up. Like, well, yeah, like you're swimming in a ball gown, like a tulle ball gown that's gonna rip no matter what. So
yeah.
You gotta and a filter and not too much stuff in there, and most betas will do just fine. So for today, for example, I have a 10,000 gallon koi pond, and then I have 2 little betas that were recently rescued that, have, they've been sitting in this.
The little tiny round bowl that you see them in at the store.
So thankfully, some warm water, a good diet, some nice filtration fixes 90% of the cases.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of like reptiles and other exotics. A lot of it is the husbandry, and if you can fix that, that's a good chunk of the battle.
Yeah, absolutely, very similar.
Yeah. Well, that would be something that would be fairly easy for most of us veterinarians to learn. It's just learning it about a different species. I always talk to people that don't do exotics, and they're like, oh, it's too hard. It's too hard. It's like, well, it really isn't, because it's almost the same as cats and dogs. You just have to understand the differences and the way they're designed, and also their husbandry. And then once you get that down, then it's the same.
Yeah, then, a lot of your medicine comes down to just correcting simple husbandry issues, because people, you don't take the how to take care of your pet, other than one sheet when you pick them up from the pet store. It's like, here you go, enjoy.
Right. And it doesn't work out best for the pet usually.
No, it does not.
So how often do you end up doing surgery on fish?
So a lot of the times, most common surgery that I'm doing these days is eye surgery or enucleations. So especially with the outdoor koi, they tend to get chromatophoramas, their pigment cell tumors on their cornea. And if they kind of extend out of the eye a little bit, the fish, when they're swimming, they can feel something's tugging, like something's up here. So they'll go to try to knock it off, which obviously, if it's an eye, it's just going to cause this big, nasty, basically rupture infection. So simplest thing to do with those guys is just take the eye out. And they do just fine with one eye. I've done double enucleations on some fish. They do just fine.
That's crazy.
They a great sense of smell and a specialized organ called the lateral line along their side. This is how they can feel vibrations in the water, and they can kind of know where their friends are next to them. Doing open coelomic surgery, so fish don't have thoraxes and abdomens. They just have the one big compartment known as the coelom. Koi in particular are prone to what I suspect are gonadal sarcomas. And these are really hard to detect when they're small because in their belly, it's not going to look that much different until the tumor starts, extending to the side or outside their body some way. And unfortunately, at that stage, it's too late. And, we have an ultrasound that you can put on a fish and you can see how much of the
I was just going to ask you that. Do you ultrasound them?
Yeah, sound and radiograph. I got it here all in my car.
Awesome.
So we do ultrasounds, and it's it's more than 50%. I really don't want to put this fish through surgery just because there's going to be a decreased prognosis with having that much of your coelomic cavity compromised.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It sounds like really a fun thing to do because you're mostly going then. Is it mostly mobile, or do people bring you
Mobile.
fish? It's all mobile?
No, so I'd much rather go to the fish because it's a lot less stressful for them. And obviously, if I'm doing the capture, it goes a lot faster than the owner is trying to do it. It's just one of those skills you got to practice. So
it's like
again,
catching birds, handling birds.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
The same. You practice, you get good at it.
Yeah, so it's a lot less stressful, and fish do not respond well to stress at all. It just makes things that much worse. So yes, if I can go to them and just make it quick, and then they're back in their home environment, they're not getting stuck in the back of the car with the radio blasting. So I'd much rather go to them. So yes, we are all mobile now. We had a brick and mortar for about 2.5 years, and it just didn't work well for fish. So yeah. I'm much happier with them.
Yeah, well, and it makes the business a little easier too. Do you have like a tech that goes with you then, or do you do it all?
No, actually, no.
Okay, nope, so you just kind of have like an office staff, and then to do your books and stuff.
Yes, they are actually located all the way across the country. They used to be here in California with me, but decided to leave. Just it's a kind of expensive place to live, and they were getting ready to have a family. So moved to Tucson for a couple of years, and now they're all the way out in New Hampshire. Wow. But they do their jobs 100% remotely. All the phones go to them. They handle all the scheduling. We just use QuickBooks for all our basic billing. So as much as I miss them, having them, around to actually like go out to dinner and talk about crazy client issues.
Yeah.
Out a lot better, especially with all the COVID nonsense that we have, that they were already remote before all this happened, and things pretty much didn't change at all.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. Well, it is super fun talking to you about this. Is there something that I didn't ask you that I should have? Because there's things that maybe I don't know to ask.
Oh, goodness. So again, while we kind of did all this outreach, is we just had a new book come out a couple weeks ago, and I want to share it as a reference to even people who might not have their own fish. It just goes through all of the silly myths that I've heard specifically to koi keeping. So the book is called How to Kill Your Koi, and of course it's ironic that a veterinarian wrote it with a title about how to kill your fish, but I put it together as a reference mostly for my own clients, but for anyone out there who just wants to know more about some of the silly, ridiculous things that I hear about fish and how a lot of that thinking is incorrect. So there's one chapter on, oh, my water looks fine, like I don't need to test it. It's like, well, what can you tell about the chemical compound from your water by like looking?
Go ahead, take a drink of it. Let's see.
Yeah. How important it is to test your water chemistry for an animal that lives there. And also has a chapter on veterinary care for koi and what services that any veterinarian, me specifically, can perform, and why it's necessary, and why this is something that we need veterinarians for. We need vets that they don't have to know everything about koi, but you need to know how to do the basics. And once you have your little fish on a piece of paper with all the diagnostics, you can pass it on to somebody else, and they'll help you interpret it.
Right. Yeah. So how do they get this book? Where do they go? To your website, or?
We have it listed on our, it is up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and basic platforms. There is an electronic version, or you can get the print version. And I wish I had a copy here in my car, but I just gave away my last one.
All right, well, we'll go check it out and look it up. That's cool. So if somebody wants to learn more about your practice, or they have a fish they want to talk to you about, or whatever, tell them how to get a hold of you.
So the best way to get a hold of me is to first go on our website. So it's cafishvet.com. So CA short for California. We also bought catfishvet.com because so many people were getting confused. So if you there's an aquatic medicine tab at the top bar. That goes over how I got into fish medicine. It has a bunch of resources for people who want to find more training programs. It has our online classes up there. I also highly recommend that they check out the American Association of Fish Veterinarians at fishvets.org. Especially if you're a student, we have a very active student subcommittee that is just looking to have more students participate. And it's great just to, talk to other students who, are interested in, again, all different types of fish things.
Yeah, because if you say you're interested in fish, they'll look at you crazy, right? It's good to know that people are into that. That's what people would say when I said I wanted to do birds. They were like, oh, why do you want to do that? So yeah, that's cool.
I remember I have a very memorable experience when I was in my small animal medicine rotation of a resident actually laughing at me to my face when I told her I wanted to be a fish vet.
That's not cool. Do you remember who it was? So you can go back and put it in her face.
I don't remember. It's probably the best that I've known. I remember her laugh. I don't remember her name.
Yeah. Well, you proved her wrong.
Exactly.
And that's what we all can do, right? That's a big lesson to take away from this podcast is do what you're passionate about and it'll work out. Like if you got to work hard at it, but it will come. And I think that's a big lesson that they can learn from you.
Yeah, you'll make a ton of mistakes. Like I've wasted so much money and made so many mistakes, but it's getting to where I want it to be. It's not there yet, but it's definitely getting there.
Well, and I would argue once it gets there that you're going to want to change it.
Oh yeah.
I was constantly, my practice was great. And then I'd be like, but it could be better. Like, I think that's a good thing to think about is it's okay if it's not exactly where you want it right now, you can keep getting it there. You don't have to quit.
So I had one big goal when I was starting out, like it'll work if I get it to 10 years. Well, now I'm at 10 years and I'm like, I don't know what to do next. So I actually have a coach of my own who's been helping me kind of like, okay, this is like, I have all these ideas and she like can take all these big picture ideas and kind of shrink them down to something that I could actually, work on in smaller steps.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of coaches and getting coached is that your brain has all of this stuff in it. And it's so hard when you're in there to sort it out. But if you can have if you can show somebody else what's going on, they can be like, oh, I can help you sort that out. So yeah, I'm really glad you have a coach. That's great. Yeah. So anybody out there that's feeling overwhelmed, just get yourself a good coach or even a mentor, like you said, like your doctor and my doctor that mentored me. That's what you need to do. Well, it's been so pleasant talking to you. I really appreciate your time. It's been so much fun. And if anybody has any questions for Dr. Sanders and wants to know more about fish, reach out to her website, reach out to me, and I'll get in touch with her and we'll get your questions answered. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. This is Dr. Jessie Sanders, and look her up and learn about fish. I want to read this koi book. I don't know that I'll ever have a koi, but I want to learn about it now. It'd be fun. Yeah. Any last words? Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, just thank you very much for having me, and I hope this inspires other people to kind of think outside the box when it comes to veterinary medicine. And please don't ignore the fish; they need your help too.
It absolutely will. I'm sure that there's going to be some new budding fish vets coming out of this podcast. I know it's going to happen. Well, thank you so
Awesome.
much. Everybody have a beautiful week, and get out there and learn about fish. Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.